Well, the House of Commons has been at a standstill for nearly a month. The Conservatives have been pushing the Liberals to release documents that are related to a now-defunct Green Fund. The Liberals refuse to provide all of that paperwork, forcing a weeks-long debate over parliamentary privilege. What does all this mean to you? Well, it means work in the House of Commons has been brought to a grinding halt. For more on what's happening, let's bring in Laurie Turnbull, professor of political science at Dalhousie University. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
First of all, how did this now defunct fund become the center of a debate in Parliament?
Okay, so there was a report from the Auditor General that was highlighting some problems that were going on with this fund. So this was about trying to take money, I think it was $1 billion that the fund had overall, and give it to companies that were essentially like clean tech. And so trying to help them out. And I think ultimately for the Liberals, like trying to build the infrastructure that is going to be part of a greener economy, that is going to get us to where we want to be in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, lowering those, having a greener economy and needing to build up capacity in this way. And so what was happening, according to the Auditor General's report, is that there was some conflict of interest issues in terms of how the money was being dispersed, issues around just in getting the money going to companies that perhaps weren't as green tech as they said they were. And so then the fund was ultimately shut down.
Yeah, back in 2023, that was suspended by the minister at the time. And now there's been this look into the paperwork about sort of, was this a company issue? Was this a government issue? The Liberals did hand over some of these documents, as we said, but not everything has been forthcoming. So which documents are being held back, and what are the reasons that the Liberals are giving for not handing everything over to the Conservatives?
I think part of the issue is the lack of clarity around what has been given and what is being held back, and why, if they gave some, why haven't they given them all? And so it was by a House vote. The House has ordered for these documents to come forward, and then the issue is that they would be passed on to the police. So I think the issue for the Liberals is that they're saying this is not how the police should get access to these kinds of documents. And this is not typically how police would get access to these sorts of documents. Right. And even the Auditor General herself has said this is not what she wants, right, to have the information that she's gathered be put to the police in this way. So the Conservatives are saying, we are not going to let anything happen until all of these documents come forward. And the Liberals are saying, we don't want it to happen this way, and so we want the whole issue to be referred to committee for further study there.
Right. And typically this is a bit of nuance, but it is important that if the RCMP wanted and needed documents for an investigation, they would ask for them themselves. They wouldn't come from a third party. That's important to clarify. So earlier this month, the House ruled that the Liberals were violating parliamentary privilege by hanging on to these documents, not for handing over to police, but just to have the Conservatives look at them. So why haven't the Liberals then been forced to hand them over?
Well, I mean, it seems like there's just this impasse in terms of they're not being forced to hand them over. The situation with Parliament is that it's not moving. It's not going anywhere. And I think, it's possible at some point that the Liberals are going to say, look, we're going to work with another party to have closure, so that then that brings the gridlock to an end. But they would need, because they're not a majority, they would need either the NDP or the Bloc to support them in that to get past all of this. And I think both the NDP and the Bloc are probably a little bit wary about being the Liberals' partner in anything right now, right? Like especially after yesterday with the Bloc, I think they don't want to be playing that role, even if they ultimately wish that this whole thing would come to an end, because now Parliament is doing basically nothing except question period. Right.
So this is what I wanted to ask you. And I know that's a lot of sort of inner workings for people, but ultimately it means that the government we have elected is at a standstill. So which pieces of legislation have actually suffered as a result of all of this?
Well, I mean, certainly there are issues around the capital gains tax that they're trying to vote on those measures to get it through. That's being held up. Changes to the Citizenship Act, that's being held up. And there is committee work going on. Like, committees are still meeting. And so this gridlock stuff isn't happening in those smaller rooms that are focused on going through the scrutiny of a bill kind of thing. So the work on the scrutiny is still happening. It's just that the bills themselves actually can't go through. And so the government can't move any other piece of legislation through. Mm-hmm. And so it ends up meaning, like, from the Conservatives' perspective on the political side, it means the government's not passing legislation. It's not able to deliver on anything. And so there's no, no way that the government can kind of put things in the window for Canadians and say, look, we're getting this done, we're getting this done. It's much harder for them to do that now because there's nothing that can go through and actually get passed in the House.
So then could this potentially affect votes of non-confidence that should be coming forward?
I think it would be difficult at this point for them to get that done. They have to get this privilege matter out of the way. There are ways they could try to finagle that maybe, but I think it would be pretty difficult. I think ultimately they need to get this privilege motion dealt with before anything else can really come before the full House of Commons. Now, my suspicion is that the Conservatives just want to make life completely miserable for the Liberals so that they eventually say, okay, never mind, and we'll go dissolve and go to early election kind of thing. Ultimately, I think that's what the Conservatives want to do, because this is not really fun for anybody. Right? Like nobody is winning when everybody is everything is grinded to a halt. But I think the Conservatives are just trying to turn the temperature up in there so badly that to just make the Liberals really frustrated and have them go seek a dissolution so that there's an election. Now, I'm wondering if the Prime Minister might, and this has been bandied about, I wonder if he might get to the point where he says, I want to prorogue, which is more of a snooze button on Parliament, just to kind of let everything die down for a while.
Laurie Turnbull, great to have your insights in all of this. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.